Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on yet another episode of the glich.stream podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. We're going to talk about software engineering in the Arab world. But before that, I'm pretty sure you have heard or seen on social media the announcement that I have launched the Patreon page. I would love for you to be part of this journey. Every small contribution helps. And the reason why I want you to join Patreon is because through the benefits, you could actually help me design, plan, ask questions, and even engage with my guests way before I publish the episodes. So you are part of the making of these episodes even before, I publish them and make them available online. As a reminder, the episodes will always be free, whether it be at the podcast or the other technical content, and use contributing to the Patreon page or even a one-off contribution through Buy Me a Coffee would definitely help a lot in this and make my efforts much more efficient and allow me to produce much more content in shorter periods of time. Thank you very much for whoever contributed already. I will be publishing your names in future episodes as part of the credits and as part of these sessions. Thank you very much. You are amazing. Your contributions help us or help this channel keep on going. Today I have Ahmad Alfy with me. Ahmad is a very dear friend. His background is pretty uncommon for a lot of people who work in tech, but it's amazing. I always love to tell the story because it's inspiring in many ways. He started by studying medicine. He even trained to become a surgeon. And then I'm not sure why. He will tell us a little bit more about that. He stopped this entire track and he went into software engineering. He is currently the CTO of Robusta Studio in Egypt, and he is also the Cairo lead for Facebook Developer Circle, and this is how we met. We met in Beirut, probably somewhere around 2016. I'm gonna do a shout out for Sarah and Salah, who were organizing a small meetup in Beirut. This is how we met, this is how we connected. We stayed in touch afterwards, and we did a lot of fantastic collaborations throughout the years. And this is the most recent one. Ahmad, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Bassem, for the introduction. Thank you so much.
Relax, it's my pleasure. And Ahmad, is there anything you want to tell us about your background that I did not cover really?
Well, yeah, you kind of like squeezed it a little bit. Throughout my life, I've been trained to, or actually, I believe that when I was young, I was lucky to have a computer when I was like at very early age, like when I was 8 years old, and throughout that journey, I was fascinated by what I can do as a computer user. I always was looking for beyond just using whatever the tools or the programs that I have on my computer, and I was fascinated by the internet. So I believe when I was young, I was being trained to be a software engineer in the future. But came the sad story that I had a big achievement during the high school, and my parents thought that it would be a great decision if I could join the School of Medicine. And suddenly I found all my dreams like going away about becoming a computer engineer. At this time, I think it was in the mid 90s. It wasn't so clear that this kind of career is gonna be as big as it's happening right now. So yeah, and they had a very interesting argument. Like they said that I can join the School of Medicine and I can study computer in my part time. So but the opposite cannot happen. And I was like, okay, fine, let's try and find out how this will go. And I spent 6 years in hell, as I like to call them. But they actually turned out to be very good because I don't know, the studying of medicine opened my eyes to a lot of things, and they taught me perseverance because um, you get to study a lot and read like a lot of textbooks and a lot of content in order to understand what you're gonna be practicing in the future. Fast forward, I decided to pick a career in surgery, and I was being trained to work as a surgeon. And I remember like there is an operation that I have attended actually, and watched it happening like 300 times or more because it was happening a lot in our hospital. It's called an arteriovenous fistula, which connects an artery to a vein. And the first time I sat on the operating table as the main operator, suddenly I made a mistake, not kind of a big mistake or anything, but at this point I realized I stopped and I told myself, this is literally what I said. I need a job where I can press Control Z for what I have done. And I walked out of the operating table and I never came back.
Wow.
The patient is fine, thankfully, he wasn't harmed. And after that, I decided to pick a career that is less stressful. And yeah,
I'm not
because
sure
surgery.
about that, but yeah.
No, so like working on the ER and the operating rooms is very, very, very stressful. I don't want to go talk about this part, but it's definitely way more stressful than working in computer engineering. Like when I
100%.
say, when I hear people talking about how stressful their work conditions are and how they're feeling, and I kind of like shut up because what I'm gonna say is something that they're not gonna like. I don't think.
It's not
Anyway,
comparable to a human
yeah,
life, of course. Like,
yeah, definitely. But I'm sure that every career has its own stressful parts and rewarding parts. Anyway, so I decided to pick a career in less stressful conditions. So I started working in as a radiologist. You spend like 8 hours a day at work. There is no emergency. You're dealing most of the time with machines rather than people. And suddenly I got a phone call from the World Health Organization, and the Mediterranean regional office, and they're asking me for consultation about an open source content management system called Joomla, because they intend to transfer their 13 years website to that content management system. And funny, at this time, I had a personal blog where I shared my experience through learning that Joomla, that content management system. What was funny is at this point, I realized that I'm getting like a request for consultation from the biggest entity that work in health and medicine throughout the world. And I realized, nope, I'm definitely doing something wrong with medicine. And I decided to do the shift. I went over there and met with the people over the WHO. We had a couple of meetings, and then they offered me a job, and I gladly accepted that job immediately without thinking. And this is where things get a little bit weird, because people always talk to me about how I made a career shift. I think a career shift is a very courageous word, because I didn't do that. Like I was trying to practice medicine and work as a freelancer on my part time or free time, and I didn't make the shift till I got a solid opportunity. Like I didn't take any risk, But of course, I was being prepared at this time. I was reading a lot. I was learning on my own, and I did everything that I can do, so that when that moment come, I'll be prepared for that. If you know what I'm saying. So yeah, that's
I
it.
think you're just being humble about it. Because I know you very well, and I think you're just being humble about it. I mean, it definitely is. I don't want to put myself in your shoes, but if I was you, I would definitely be terrified, because you've spent all of this time training, preparing, in one area. You've invested so much, and then you definitely had an opportunity, but there's also always the imposter syndrome that can kick in at that point in time. You must have been really scared to really let go of all of that, and you
Until now,
definitely
really.
took risk, right?
Yeah. Like when people ask me, I kind of tell a silly joke that I've killed too many people when I was practicing surgery. Apparently, the airport officers in the US didn't appreciate that joke, and they put me on check for killing that when I was traveling. But really, I still have doubts till that day, although all of the interesting things that happened throughout my career. And I remember very well when I was studying, we had a lot of doctors coming and telling us that if you think that every one of you is going to be a doctor one day, you're mistaken. Some of you are going to pick different careers and pick other stuff to do other than medicine. And I wasn't convinced with that. How can somebody spend all this time training and reading and studying and going through all out these exams? Like the exams were really hard. Like for me, like reading an article or reading a textbook, it's the norm in medicine. So shout out for everyone working on for my old career and all my friends who are still doing all their best to help people every day and working hard on a daily basis.
It's funny. It's funny how life works, because I always said that software engineering or our field is at the crossroad of so many different disciplines. And if you embark on a journey of, building a career in this field, you will definitely be exposed to different industry verticals. Medicine, for example, being one of them. Like next week, I'm going to be joining a panel where I'm going to be talking about how we helped start the first open source program office in the World Health Organization.
Interesting.
And it's funny how, these things crossed paths in a certain way. But yeah, have you in your experience, like, has medicine creeped into your career in any other way, shape, or form, or this was something that was just put in the past and it was never brought up again?
Well, interestingly, like there is a lot of like projects or kind of work that I have done where I found myself being praised for my previous background in medicine because I actually I was able to help yeah, like finding common understanding between the technical people that I now belong to and from the client perspective the people with the medical background. I actually never there's a lot of people when I was making the transfer who were saying that, oh, that's interesting, you can now start working on bioinformatics or like there is a lot of standards for storing like medical imaging and medical records, so I can build upon the knowledge that I had earlier in from my study. But that didn't actually work that way, probably because I wasn't in an area where we had these kind of projects. But still, whenever I have a chance or find anything that I can contribute to that based on my previous experience, I definitely jump in because now I can switch heads very quickly, you know.
So
And interestingly, there is also just like what you were saying that there's a lot of crossroads between different fields. One of the biggest interesting and applications for stuff like artificial intelligence and machine learning are particularly in medicine, especially in medical imaging. There is a lot of like stuff happening in this field and a lot of applications that people are working on. And I found that there is one big company in Egypt working on solutions for dentists where they develop software that they can scan the inner of your how your mouth look like and like design stuff completely based on AI. And the people working on that part are mostly from engineering background and with some experts from the medical background. I didn't have the luck to be a part of something like that, but I've seen it happening all the time.
so Ahmad, from my knowledge of your background, you have specialized in front end and more specifically in accessibility and performance. Why did you choose this area?
Well, interesting. I when I was introduced when I was introduced to the internet, I remember my father told me, "Look, Ahmed, this is the internet where you can find everything that you're looking for online." That was back in 1995 or 94, something like that. But the problem is everything in here is in English, so you have to be very good in English. And I remember when we were finding websites that in Arabic that was interesting. Like we know these kind of websites by name. Like it was like three or four, and interesting they were publishing content in an image format because at this time the encoding were not working in the browsers to display Arabic letters and glyphs and these kind of stuff. And the internet actually, I was hooked immediately because I was able to find interesting stuff that I'm looking for, and I was able to follow the interesting topics that I'm interested in. And the first thing I tried to do was to create a web page where I list all my favorite links to open it whenever I want. So I started by creating a web page. Actually, this is where I found that it's really simple. I was not introduced to the popular language that were being used at this time. Was it whether it was a server-side language or like something like HTML or anything? You know, we had an interesting tool that comes with Netscape, the old browser that really successful for Mozilla, Firefox, and these kind of browser. And I was able to create something like using a what you see is what you get editor. I think it was called Netscape Composer. And I quickly found myself able to create web pages very quickly and link between those different pages. It was very interesting at this time to see how a hyperlink work. You know that all hyperlinks at this time had an underlying text, line happening between them. Seeing this line in blue and turning into purple when you visit it, was very interesting for a kid that is 12 years old at this time. At this time, there wasn't something called web development, or at least I didn't know something like that. And gradually, I found that this role is done by somebody who is called a web designer. So you basically create something and use an image processing tool to, like we used to call it, like cutting the design and export it to something like a web page. And this was my entry. And then I was interested to see beyond the scene how that worked. And I remember that was in the 1998 or something. At this time, we didn't have books, we didn't have this kind of content where I live in Egypt. And the only source for me to learn something like that was pressing the F1 key on the tool and reading the help and learning about all this interesting stuff about the HTML. So this was basically my introduction to programming, if I may say. Actually, I remember a funny story where we had an old game called BB, or I don't know what was it short for, but I remember that I was looking at the game and I found that it had a lot of files, like level one dot weird extension. Like these are the old games that used to work at the DOS environment. And I remember me and my brother were stuck at level number 3, and I quickly shifted renamed the file that is named level 4 to be level 3, and I found myself skipping that level. This is where I found that, oh, okay, there is something more to computers than just using it as it is. Fast forward to web design, and I started reading more and more. Internet connections became much more stable and much more better, and I found there's more than HTML to learn. I started to see the difference between the server environment and the client environment, or the browsers, as we may call them nowadays. And this is where I spent my time focusing on. Of course, I've worked on different environments as well. Like I worked on the server side environment for some time, but I found that it's interesting to work on the client, because you actually get to see what are you working on, and it's more than what just creating stuff that looks nice and interesting for people to use. A lot of people misunderstand this part. When I started learning about accessibility and using the different input methods and consuming this kind of content, like screen readers, or like the entry using Braille keyboard and this kind of stuff, I was hooked immediately, and I started doing all this kind of stuff out of love for just to create accessible content where everyone can use it. Because I'm sure that someday I'm gonna be an old guy who need this kind of stuff to use. So I was immediately hooked. I think because it's the good thing to do, like maybe not because it's like most of our clients don't care about this kind of stuff. We don't have any kind of laws that enforce these kind of practices in our region, sadly, about that. But it's interesting. We get a lot of quotation from people who sometimes ask us to create something that is focused on with accessibility in mind. And this is where I raise my flag and I say, hey, I can do that, and I can do it very well. And you're never gonna find anybody who can do it better than me. Of course, I mean in our region. I mean,
Trust me, it's not just in our region. It's an uphill battle everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah, very few companies focus on accessibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't call myself an accessibility expert. I think I'm more of a fanatic. I kind of like this stuff and I experiment with it. But it's also what is interesting about accessibility is that people think that when you mention the word, you actually think about someone with some kind of a limitation, that a health limitation that kind of hinder them from using your system or platform or application properly. But if you think about it, all of us struggle with something like that. Actually, without even struggling, let's say that you're holding a cup and drinking something while you're navigating a web application using your keyboard. Can you do that? Is it coded in a way that allows you to do that? So you're a perfectly healthy person without any limitation. But in this particular situation, you're not using your right hand. You're not using your let's say your computer had a broken mouse or a touchpad. So are you gonna be able to navigate through this application and get, let's say that's your online banking platform? Are you gonna make the transfer that you have to make today without using a mouse? This is what's interesting for me.
100%. That's awesome. And yeah, I wish more people thought about this, because it's just sad, the state of the internet in a way, where, or at least the state of many websites, there's an over reliance on emojis, everything that is visual. These things do not have proper fallbacks. If someone is using a screen reader, for example, or some text to audio type of device, it will be a horrible experience. Just having these things be read out loud and not being able to skip them very efficiently. So yeah, I definitely attribute your appreciation of accessibility to you're continuing sort of your mission of starting as a doctor in a way.
Actually, I think that's like it manifested itself to me when I was reading a very interesting and popular story on Reddit, where somebody was talking about where he was facing a hard time one day on the road. His car broke, and suddenly a Mexican guy showed up who doesn't know how to speak in English, and he approached him and helped him for free. And the guy tried to offer him some money, and the Mexican guy said, "Today you, tomorrow me." So, in a very simple word, this is the only words he could speak of. So, this is the way I like to think about it. Like,
100%.
I'm helping people today so that I might find people who can help me in the future.
In the future,
And
yeah.
and this is interesting because I've always focused on teaching the people that are working with the importance of these kind of stuff. Like I always highlight these kind of mistakes on code review, teach them how to do it, and not because these kind of stuff are gonna be we're gonna be um, um, like on a demo or something. Probably nobody's gonna ask about these kind of stuff, or they are not gonna even notice anything like that. There's also an interesting thing. Maybe I think of it as something related to accessibility, which is probably because we're living in a region where our internet connection is kind of limited, and we pay a lot of money for the internet. So whenever you visit a web page and you find yourself downloading a lot of assets that you probably don't need, or unoptimized assets and this kind of stuff, kind of like consuming your own bandwidth, and these kind of silly situations that you're put in, or actually not just in our regions. Like if you're walking down the streets and you're on your phone with a silly 3G connection, and you're trying to do something urgent like finding a reservation for where you your favorite restaurant or something like that, and you struggle with a huge banner loading and these kind of stuff. Those are actually interesting stuff that I kind of focus on, because I believe they make a huge impact on the people that you're using your service. Of course, the service itself has to be providing a value, but I think this kind of stuff also makes a little bit difference. It's
100%.
useful for the business side, and way more useful for the consumer perspective.
100%. I think the problem is that there's an overabundance of resources, right? And whenever you have that overabundance, there will be people who are not going to really think about optimizing, because they're going to say, yeah, why optimize? What's the purpose of that? And unless we explicitly put in goals and constraints for us to think about these things, right? No one is going to be bothered with them unless they experience the problem themselves, and they're going to think, but yeah, okay, yeah, we're going to build apps for a developed country. Why would people in a developed country even access our platform? They probably are not even aware that people in that region use or rely on utilities. And I think that's also the problem with building for the internet in general, is that sometimes you just build, you put stuff out there, but you don't get feedback. So you're sort of like building in the dark in a way. And unless you get this feedback and people complain about these things, then you will pay a little bit more attention to them.
Yeah, there is a very interesting article called it's called World Wide Web, not Western Wealthy Web, by Bruce Lawson, I think. Amazing guy, works. I think he used to work on Opera, and it's an article published on two parts. You can Google it, and it's filled with interesting information that people could who are interested in that topic to go and investigate and read and see how impactful that is. And I'd like to quote one of my friends when we were complaining about the massive sizes of updates for the games that we play online. Like if you you're getting back home on the weekend, finding your own PC or console or whatever, and you find like a 60 gigabyte update that was waiting to be downloaded. Like this is like half of my monthly quota. You guys, you're treating the internet as an external storage.
As a cheap commodity, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's not in a lot of
Yeah,
parts of the
exactly.
world,
Yeah.
100%.
Mm.
And I find this a bit it's sad, you know, like I remember back in my day when I was in Lebanon, like everybody was on this Spotify music streaming bandwagon. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We can't stream music in this
Exactly.
place. You have to download it. It's impossible to stream.
Until that day, I still think about that.
100%. And unfortunately and sadly, there are still a lot of parts of the world where this is actually the case. Like, you
Yeah,
know, you pay for not only the speed of of the internet that you get, but you pay for the quota. You pay for the, you know,
exactly. The bandwidth that you're
the
consuming. Yeah.
transfer rates. Yeah.
Mm.
All right, awesome. This is a good segue for us to talk a little bit more about the region in general and the current state of software engineering and technology, right? We've spent a lot of time there. You are probably the lead of one of the biggest developer circles, probably in the region, or I don't know, maybe globally even, and you compete with probably a lot of other regions. How many developers are currently part of that
Um,
Facebook group?
um, I think at the moment we had like Facebook group itself is not one of the biggest in the region. We mainly promote some kind of content related to the open source content that is provided by Facebook and stuff that is like the VR and what do they call it, the mixed reality and this kind of stuff. But there's actually a lot of the camera effects that you see on like Instagram and this kind of stuff. But there is also a bigger community in Egypt that is not specific to that circle, and maybe this is where it's more diverse and work with different kind of technologies. In Egypt, we have a really huge developers community because, as you can see, um, this kind of work that we do is able to change people's life. Like you get very quickly to get a really decent job at like if you're good at what you're doing, people will call for you and reach out to you and offer you immigration visas and or even hire you to work on a remote basis with a salary that is definitely higher than what the average market in our region pays. And this is the case with different countries, not just with ours. But the thing is, we have a lot of like the let's say that we have a lot of universities that teaches computer engineering as their major. We also have a really like we can call it like a governmental institution for people who are interested in making career shift after they graduate. Like it's called the ITI. It's like a huge organization have been graduating people since 2000 or maybe 180 80 1995 maybe or something like that. So there is a lot of people working in tech in Egypt. So
Can you
that
give me
created
like a
a
rough estimate, just a rough number? Like if we're talking about the total number of developers or software engineers in Egypt specifically, what are
I
we
don't know,
talking
but
about? What order of magnitude? Like,
yeah, I think like I help moderate a group on Facebook that contains around 70,000 people who are
wow.
interested in software engineering. And not everyone on Facebook. There is a lot of people who
Of
aren't there, but
course,
this
yeah.
particular group is the biggest one. And they
Amazing.
share a lot of interesting topics and content. And there is a lot of people also in the region who have produced content that fits for everyone. Like if you don't know English, for example, that that will be a barrier for you to learn, but there are people producing content in Arabic for you to learn this kind of
That's one
stuff.
of the most amazing things. Like I was always on I was not aware, to be honest, of the ecosystem in Egypt specifically. I thought that where are the Arab content creators? I haven't heard of them, and this is how the funny modern web works, at least social networks work. You live in your bubble, you really don't know what's happening outside of your bubble. And then I got exposed to this whole world. It's like literally an entire universe of Egyptian content creators who are producing really high quality stuff in Arabic.
Yeah.
And they have gigantic YouTube channels. They
Yeah.
publish on so many different platforms. They write a lot of amazing things. You have a diaspora in all sorts of countries across the world working in big tech and in a lot of giant companies internationally. And that was
Yeah.
really fascinating to me. And if I am to estimate, I think you would probably have around between between 300 and 500,000 probably developers. Um,
Maybe.
I'm not
Oh,
sure about the numbers, but I'm just if I'm to guess, I would say it's probably around that figure. If you have one Facebook group of 70K, you know, you probably definitely have that.
I have more. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And there's an interesting thing that I've also noticed, like, as you're saying, we have a lot of people working on different big companies across the globe, like the different Fangs and other companies like that. What is interesting for me that this year, when the summer started, I found that a lot of students on LinkedIn, they were announcing that they are joining internships in Facebook in London, Microsoft in Seattle, and a lot of interesting companies. Like these, we're talking about students joining as interns. That never happened in that magnitude. Like I was opening LinkedIn and scrolling through the feed, and I found a lot of people who are announcing something like that. Not just one or two or 10. Like daily, there is like I think I've seen more around like 40 something people or even more. So this talks a lot about the quality of the education that you're receiving, or actually maybe not just that, how hard these people have been working and how that ecosystem helped them to achieve something like that. Like when you back in my days, I remember when I was still practicing medicine. I used to work with somebody as a freelancer who used to be a doctor as well, and used to encourage me. And he used to say, maybe someday you'll be working at Microsoft, and that was the epitome of the career goal of everyone. Like I know somebody who started working over there. Right now we're finding a lot of people joining as interns and learning, and I think that if it doesn't speak about the quality of the education, I think it speaks about the ecosystem that helped them reach out to the state like that, and how the internet actually provided them with all this kind of content online that is available, and the hard work that they have done to reach this state.
100%,
Yeah.
100% globalization and this modernization movement and the accessibility of everything nowadays. Like I remember early on in my career, 2007, 2008, there was literally nothing. Like I mean, we used to look for stuff. We had to go through documentation. I remember I used to put
Help
like
F1.
yeah, exactly. You just mentioned it. And I used to have floppy disks like early on, like filled with whatever information I could find
Yeah.
about something. And we had to dig deep, and sometimes we couldn't find. Now there's like at least 10 YouTube videos for any topic you could think about, and that explain in as much detail as you'd like about every single thing. So I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. But the plethora of content that exploded suddenly, I think, also created I wouldn't call it a problem, but it kind of like I see a lot of people who are asking for the perfect source to learn something, and this is a completely different problem, because you're lucky enough to see all these kind of stuff. Now you're starting to
It's the
like
curation problem.
yeah, exactly, and compare between them, and I mean, a lot of people actually get stuck in that phase and they never make any progress, sadly.
I think the new problem that people need to solve is not necessarily more content; it's more like content curation, and
Mm.
I think already people have started doing that. What I see also lacking in what some solutions have become popular is people create learning paths. So basically, they give guided tours, even if they don't create the content themselves, but at least they give like a map for different topics that people should actually go through in certain stages and different steps. And I can
Yeah,
understand it because people want to optimize their time. They really don't want to invest in something and then they end up learning that, oh, this is not really helpful, so on and so forth.
but
Um,
don't you think that like even if there is somebody like created the perfect plan, other plans will work as well. Like my learning path was definitely different than yours, definitely different than somebody else, and we all kind of like achieving interesting stuff. So because I see a lot of people who are asking me about the resources and materials that I used to learn from. Like these kind of stuff are no longer it doesn't exist anymore, and it's no longer relevant in a way. And there is definitely a lot of resource and material that is way much better than what I used to learn.
You are
So
spot on, to be honest, because you're spot on because that's exactly what I used to teach my students back in when I started SE Factory, which is learning how to learn. Like I cannot give you the formula. It doesn't apply. Well, the way I learned, the circumstances, what you just mentioned, it's all gonna be different. And my experiences, so you just gotta explore. And sometimes you learn many things you did not expect to learn just because you stumbled upon something or you made a mistake somewhere. And this offers you opportunities that no one can actually predict or plan.
mhm.
I still think there is value in providing, the trunk or like a starting point or the basis of a
Yeah,
program. I think it's important for beginners who really don't know what they don't know.
yeah,
Because if they embark on a journey where they just keep on discovering things, they could go on very deep tangents without really making progress in towards their goal.
yeah.
And I think that's important. But also the meandering, which is just described, is just as important, 100%.
Okay.
Um, Perfect. I want to talk about the state of technology in Egypt. You just mentioned that, there are a lot of programs that invest in talent, that they want talent to grow, they want them to build careers in tech. What is the state of tech companies or even non-tech companies but who hire software engineers in Egypt? Like, do you have big corporations? Do you have startups? Do you have mid-sized companies? How's the situation there?
Yes, pretty much as you just mentioned, we have different types of companies with different sizes and different like domains and stacks. We have interesting. We have one of the companies that provide um, like a solution for tracking crashes on mobile applications that is called Instabug, and it's being used by almost every Fortune 500 companies or the biggest companies in Silicon Valley are using their applications. Like I visited their office, and they have like a list of blocks that have like the logo for every company. You can go in there and see here is Airbnb, this is Tumblr, this is Facebook, this is Adobe, and all these companies are using the SDK that is developed here in Egypt. It's a company operating from Egypt called Instabug, and the solution that they provide is being deployed and used by millions of users. Like the chance that your mobile phone contain at least 6 applications that use that SDK. So we have like companies working on very deep technical stuff. Like we provide SDKs for people to use for reporting crashes. There is also companies providing solutions for like other companies in the region. We, for example, where I work, we're currently focusing on e-commerce, and we partner with like the biggest e-commerce open source platform, which is called Magento, and we provide e-commerce solutions implemented for like the biggest FMCGs in the region and the retail um, uh, market, and also the hypermarkets in the region. And what's interesting that we started working on, and I'm mentioning that because it's not, I want to talk about the company where I work, but I find that we were able to come up with a product that will, we actually found that it will fit for the clients that we were working with. So we started building e-commerce platforms, just like an e-commerce platform where it's a cart and you do picking up your stuff and pay for it, and that's it. And we found that when working with retailers and bigger like hypermarkets and these kind of stuff, they have different problems because, for example, they don't know the exact store that they have because they have massive stores and their stock might be inside the store that is not on the system. So we had them to develop something that we call the pickers app, where somebody pick either from the store or from the stock that they have. From there came like 3 different apps to help them with the whole process. So there are companies working with solving these kind of problems, and we have companies working on tech. We have also a lot of like international companies working in Egypt. Like probably most of we have I think we have an office from Microsoft in here. Definitely the big telecom companies that are operating in here, and all these companies like the provide the consumers with all kind of services that they're looking for, and they develop solutions in-house, not just using stuff outside from abroad. I mean, we also have a lot of people who are working remote, and this is kind of becoming like the new thing. And a lot of people who were not interested in traveling abroad find it very convenient to work with bigger like engineering teams and better engineering practices maybe, and getting paid in a way that is better than the average of the market. So they go that way. And interesting, I don't know, a lot of people who have been working with that model, and the technology that they're working on is not so different from what people abroad may be working on. Maybe the scale is bigger, so there's just a few things that you might be able to pick up very quickly, but then you're ready to go. But the basis that you have is solid, and you just will go through the interview and pass, because it's not so different,
Yeah, remote work is going to change the world, I think. I definitely have a couple of colleagues at GitHub who work from Egypt as contractors for
Okay.
GitHub. So yeah, definitely, this is a testament of your, what you just mentioned.
I think it's gonna change the world, but I think the countries are, or let's say the governments are having like hard times figuring out what to do, like stuff like taxes and a lot of political stuff that we might not be able to go through. Yeah, exactly. So
I think
yeah.
that's the next question I wanted to ask. What do you think is lacking from our countries for them to become technology hubs? So you just mentioned a lot of great or different types of companies hiring in the region, but I also feel like a lot of the hiring that is done is either as outsourcing, just outsourcing offices, not necessarily heavy R&D that is being done in these territories, with the exception of a few companies like Instabug is definitely one of big success stories in the region. It's probably is it a unicorn? I
Yeah.
think it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
so just like what Anghami did, so on and so
Yeah.
forth in Lebanon, it's
Mm,
one of this small category of companies that
yeah.
have launched in the area and went international, but they also decided to maintain their R&D houses in their home countries.
I think we also have an R&D house for by Microsoft that works specifically on Ping, and I was lucky enough to go there and talk with some of the guys working over there, and they were working on really interesting stuff. Like they showed me like I know that they're working on stuff related to the maps and the that are catered for commercial use, not the free versions like the Google map that people are using, that might be giving you information about where some trucks can like what do we call it, move, and between which times, and the available height and altitude and this kind of stuff. So there are research and development centers in here, and I think people are working on interesting stuff, but I don't think they're not talked about much, because maybe, I don't know, but for sure there are maybe not a lot of R&D's houses like this, but they do exist. Also, I had a friend who used to work at Amazon, and during his vacation in Egypt, he was visiting like last year. I think Amazon acquired one of the biggest e-commerce platforms in the region. It was called Souk, and now it's operating under the name of Amazon. And he started working at one of the offices. Like it's an Amazon office, but it doesn't have any software engineer. It's just for operation and paying and this kind of stuff. And the guy found that, okay, there is a lot of things that can happen here. Why don't we hire in here? So I remember him telling me that he talked to his manager and pitched the idea, and the guy found that that's interesting. Okay, let's try it. And I know for sure that they are hiring right here and now, and there are people who are actually starting to work at Amazon from Egypt. So it's happening.
Amazing. So here's my question. Like, why didn't it happen before? Like, I know Microsoft has been investing in Egypt for a really long time. For some reason or another, maybe someone discovered Egypt, or maybe, an Egyptian person contributed to that. And I think also this way, Amazon started discovering this market as well. Do you think we are very bad at promoting ourselves, or why do you think not many other companies are discovering the region as well?
Well, maybe maybe what you're saying is right. We're really bad at promoting that we are doing. We're not good at pitching the benefits that you might be having in here. But there are also some reason that might make it sound like a little bit scary for others to come and start their businesses in here. Like we have serious issues with infrastructure. Like um, I want to be calling names of the companies that handling the internet in here, but we're all suffering from really limited connectivity. We have a lot of stuff that doesn't help us grow as much as we want. There is also a lot of stuff related to the taxes and the laws that are not as clear as they should. So I think it's more of a business decision that rather than the quality of the engineers, because we are seeing our engineers working everywhere in the world, and they're working from here with every other company. Like, so one of the most popular questions people are asking in one of the Facebook groups that I help moderate is how they unlock Medium, like the publishing platform. It's filled with technical content that everyone is making use of. But sadly, for some reason, somebody published something that the government didn't like at this time, and they decided we're going to shut down the whole thing. Not just that, we're currently facing similar stuff like the censorship and banning of content. There is also maybe um, a lot of people are. The second most popular question is about getting your VPN to work, because a lot of people who are working with European companies, they are only allowed to access their like staging environment and this kind of stuff using a specific VPN that they're using, and it happens that this kind of a VPN is blocked for some reason. So a lot of people are connecting to a public VPN and then use their work VPN just as a tunnel. So imagine the hell at the working condition that they're facing every day. So these are like problems that we're facing, and they hinder our productivity and our ability to focus on the work that we're doing. Imagine that you are unable to connect to the computer that you should use to be working on because of something that unjustifiable from my perspective, for example.
100%.
So yeah, so these are kind of the stuff that we're facing that might be um, um, less interesting part of the job that you have to
Yeah.
deal with. There's also an interesting part that happens like whenever it's really silly. The internet providers always try to like intervene with your connection and inject all kind of ads and anything that you're trying to work. I remember for some time that people were wondering if there's something with the connection that I'm working on, because I cannot even use something like SSH to connect to a machine or something like that. So they are really silly stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So I imagine that any business decision maker people are definitely gonna put this kind of stuff as a priority when they kind of take a decision
Make
whether they
decision.
operate in here from. Yeah.
You know what the sad part is? I see all of what you just mentioned in Lebanon as well.
Mm.
And what the saddest part of it all is that people blame themselves. They think they are not good enough, you know? They I see a lot of talent that is just capable, if not more capable, than a lot of talent I work with across the globe. And I've had experiences working with a lot of people across the globe. It's not and I always say that our problem is self-inflicted, number 1. Number 2, we as people, we cannot do much about it because it's always a matter of infrastructure, as you mentioned, having access to the basic proper internet connectivity and electricity and water and things like that. And the
Yeah.
second thing is legislation. It's so important, and I cannot understand why legislators in this region don't understand that the technology world can unlock a lot of economic prosperity,
Yeah.
especially in a region where that graduates a lot of tech talent. The shortage is real. All of these major corporations would love to hire and build major centers. There's a lot of investments that are being done by AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. They're opening even data centers in the Gulf, in
Yeah.
Qatar, that it was just announced
Yeah,
yesterday or today.
AWS, I think, or
Uh,
Microsoft Azure.
Microsoft
That,
Azure in Qatar, but AWS
yeah,
in Bahrain,
yeah,
and Dubai. So it's very common that this region is prospering, and it's. I mean, I'm happy for the Gulf countries that they are they are having more economic stability and they are
yeah,
being a bit more
definitely.
progressive.
Mm,
But I think there's so much more talent and potential also across the region,
yeah.
where people speak multiple languages. They are traveled. They are highly educated. They have so much to offer. So whoever is listening, you're not the problem.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that.
You're talking about something interesting about how we used to blame ourselves. Like we always maybe we don't realize the value of the stuff that we're capable of. Like one day when I was in Lebanon, and that was a very eye-opening moment where we had a couple of colleagues from Facebook who were talking with. With us and a couple of other guys. We had some guy from Algeria, and I remember we had Sarah and Salah, and the guy from Algeria were only understanding. He either understand Arabic or understand French. So I remember we had two guys who were foreigners who are only able to speak in English, and they were addressing that guy. So Sarah was talking with them from using English, and then translating to that guy in French, and talking with us in Arabic. And I have seen their faces about how they look to Sarah, and how she fluently can switch between three languages. Not a lot of people, not a lot of people can do something like that. Like that's
Definitely
really
not. Yeah.
fascinating. So we don't realize how fortunate we are in some stuff. And you also what I think interesting, that we really have to work hard. So in order to prove to ourselves that we're capable, and we don't realize suddenly that we have done far more than anybody else. So yeah, that's interesting.
100%. You know what's even funnier? I'm here in the Netherlands, and for me to get my permanent residency or to get my like citizenship, I
Mm,
have to pass a culture exam and I have to learn the Dutch language. Like the
mm,
Dutch are really great in speaking English, but probably not another language. They never had to. And in
mm.
Lebanon, we are born talking Arabic, French, and English. Some people even
Yeah.
learn another fourth language. And the funny thing is, we cannot really visit the countries that we know the languages of.
Yeah.
And you can only visit them until you become an adult or you get your visa. And sometimes even you don't even get the chance to go visit the countries.
What's interesting? I once found a friend of mine roasting somebody on the internet. He was telling him, "Guy, like the language that you speak, your primary language is my fourth language." That was the best roast I ever heard of. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
interesting.
All right, amazing. What do you think? So, beyond the challenges that we are facing in the region, there is also, I think, a mismatch between some of the skills, right? So, beyond the talent and everything, there are some skills that are lacking, whether it be a technical and soft skills. What do you think companies are looking for in general? And what do you think are the skills that are lacking also sometimes in our region?
You're mentioning very interesting topic because at the moment my company is helping another company in Europe to establish their technical hub in here. And a lot of people who are passing the technical interview are unable to pass other that we call the soft skills like tests that they make. Um, and it's not just about the language. Like you can speak in the language that they're speaking with very fluently, but you're unable to communicate and articulate your ideas on something that they understand. I think soft skills are very underrated. A lot of people don't think about it when it comes to like weighing the stuff that you need to learn. They only focus on the technical stuff. Um, and with soft skills, for me, the word kind of had a bad reputation always because it was always associated with the kind of like motivational speaking and talks that you can do whatever you want and without really bringing any valuable lesson to learn. So, but I actually found throughout my career that soft skills are, might at some time might be more important than the technical skills. Like there is a lot of meetings that I have attended that I was able to come up with the outcome that I want because of my negotiation skills with the people that I'm talking with, and the communication. Learn what to say and when to say it, and the way that with the tone that you speak in, that you speak with the other people. So I think negotiation skills are very important. It's not always had to be a fight. Actually, if you think about it, every one of us as a software engineer, you always like every day we are making decisions, right? And a lot of time that decisions that you're making are not. It's not your call. By the end of the day, you have to make like a design document or something that you have to convince other people to work with. And a lot of like I think a lot of this meeting comes to whoever is able to negotiate better, if they have a better argument and can present their argument in a way that you cannot refute. So it's not because negotiation always people think it comes to like me and you fighting and who's going to take what from the other. And it's not just like that. We actually do that on a daily basis. And it's also important for you in your career when you're negotiating about the salary you're looking for, and the kind of team that you're looking to join, or the kind of work that you're interested in, the area of your growth, and etc. So yeah, definitely negotiation skills, skills is crucial. I think a lot of people miss great opportunities because of their communication skills. Like I had a lot of feedback on people who were, they seemed reluctant. They're not decision makers. They are not courageous enough. All from technical discussion, like you're solving a problem in front of the interviewer, and he kind of tests you and asks you something about that, and that makes you completely shift your path. Although that you're on the right path, you're not able to make a correct judgment based on like a small doubt somebody tried to implant it in you. I think that's it. That's really crucial. I think this is an area we are all lacking in a sort of in a way. Like I happen to acquire some of these skills throughout my career through the situation that I've been put on, and through some coaches that I was lucky enough to work with, and they helped me to see or realize that these are stuff that it's okay to disagree with somebody. That like I used to agree with everyone talking to me, because I really think that conflict is something maybe I shouldn't be thrown in front of. I would be happy to if we all agree on something, but yeah, I think our education doesn't prepare us for this kind of stuff, if I may say so. Yeah,
100%.
maybe.
I couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more. Like I'm very happy that what I'm listening to, because I invest a lot of time in building content in this vein as well. And I think also like I could definitely go on YouTube and just say that yeah, this engineer from or talk about some technical topic or demonstrate something and just get thousands of followers. But not a lot of people want to listen to what really helps in helping you get promoted,
Yeah.
and helping you, go to the next level, and helping you be a better engineer
Mhm.
overall.
Yeah.
Just because we put these things at a lesser importance than technical stuff, and maybe even sometimes it's not really enjoyable, to look in the mirror and
Yeah.
or maybe
Yeah.
even to
Exactly.
hear about the gaps that
100%.
we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I agree 100%. And like I've been put through situations where some of my colleagues were asking me what to do in some cases that are 100% obvious. Like let's say we're working with an external party on an application that they we're going to be publishing for them, and these it happens that these kind of guys are providing, let's say, the back end for what we are doing, and we're providing the mobile app, for example, and they're one of the biggest telecom companies in the region. And for some reason we think that a certain feature should be implemented using something like a WebSocket or real-time communication that will help us instead of using any of the old methods. And the guys on the other side resist 100% that no, we're going to work using the same way that we're working on it right now. And they're coming to me asking what we can do. And to be honest, this is a case that 100% obvious. You're just gonna list everything, the pros and cons, like in an email, and say that we think that this is a better decision, and if you're going to force us to use something like that, we have to come up with a formal decision maker who is willing to take the responsibility when all these cons happen, so you don't come and blame us. Like, and they instantly switch their decision when we did something like that. And for me, it's really obvious. You shouldn't come to me asking what should I do in a situation like that. For somebody who has been a senior, or let's say like with 6 or 7 years of experience, this should be the obvious solution that you do, you
Exactly. You
know?
should have done this probably before, or maybe even mentored by someone to learn something like this, or
Exactly.
even took a course or something that taught you this skill,
Yeah,
because it
exactly.
doesn't take much.
Yeah. So I think soft skills are underrated, and it's something that we turn. I like the expression that you use, that it requires that you look in the mirror and identify the gaps that you have, and definitely none of us would like to do something like that.
Yeah, it's very revealing, and
Yeah.
I can understand. I definitely had a lot of challenges. The problem is you can learn these things in two ways. You can learn it the easy way by having someone coach you through it, or you can learn it the hard way
Yeah.
by going through all of the difficulties in life
Yeah.
and build up all the scars and have all of the possible conflicts you could possibly go through for you to pick up these skills. I personally chose the tough path. I regret it
Same.
sometimes. I regret it now because sometimes I look at some of my students and what they were able to accomplish, and I see that they've been able to do twice as much in half of the time.
Yeah.
And that lets me to reflect like, could I have accomplished more if maybe I was more open to coaching, advice, things like that? And I
Mm,
definitely think that that would have been the case
mm,
if I wasn't too stubborn sometimes to and resisting certain things.
yeah.
All right,
Interesting.
amazing.
Mm.
Um, Ahmad, one last question for you before we
Yeah.
wrap up,
Sure.
because this has been a really fantastic conversation
Thank you
so
so
far,
much.
and I don't want it to end. To be honest, I mean, I think we're definitely touching on a
Yeah.
lot of
Same.
great points.
Same as well.
Why do you think that a lot of people or talent in our region wants to exit the region and they want to move to Europe or the US? And why do you think there's this mentality that in the US or Europe they know better? Where do you think this is coming from? Why do we have this lesser?
This is the tough question, really, because this is something that we're working, like we're experiencing every day. I have an old friend who happens to be the first developer that I ever met. You know, I was kind of like a medical student who goes to school, a medical school, and learn every day, and work as a freelancer with remote companies. Even I think before the term remote was brought to our culture in a way. That was in mid 2000s, maybe 2005 or 2006. And I remember when that guy traveled to the US. This was the first guy that I remember he was a close friend of mine because, as I was saying, this is the very first developer that I met. And the day that I met him changed everything, maybe because I thought, why don't I have much more friends like that? Because people who can speak the language that I'm capable to discuss and understand. And I was very sad when that guy traveled because I was always thinking that the development of our company is gonna happen because of if a guy like that is located and working and developing in here. So as the time goes, you find that you just don't say goodbye to one friend who's traveling, or they're becoming like 10 people a year or even more. I think the main reason, we're going to be discussing I think the technical part maybe shortly, but I think the main thing is that they are looking for better life where they are living. They will have more control over their future. There will be more justice than that we have in here. There will be more stability for their future families, and I think you can relate very well for this kind of stuff because we live in the same region and we like experience similar situations that like make us question what is happening. What can we do? Is it the right to stay in here or is it a lost cause? You know, I don't want to make it sound sad, but sadly, this is a question that we have people who didn't travel yet ask them every day. For the technical part, I think that people think that maybe abroad they know better, but I think mostly they work on a bigger or much broader scale that we more than that we work on. The technology might not be that different, but the scale is huge or massive. Like I don't have numbers, but we we rarely need to build unless it's something that's gonna be used by the whole nation. Like we never build something that is used by a lot of customers. The lot of customers in our region makes nothing to like a company operating in Europe who's serving a whole continent. That's a different scale that serving or focusing on a single country. For us, we can highlight that this is something like an achievement, or how we can optimize that by going to a cloud platform and optimizing the cost and doing something with the zero downtime. For other people working on bigger companies who serve a whole continent, this is every day's work. So I think a part of it relate to what we call that the grass is always greener on the other side. You always think that people know better, and this tend to happen on most of the first meetings, that when you join, when you are onboarded on a technical team that you're first starting to work with, and you're looking to learn from the masters, and I've experienced that from a lot of people who have been telling me that, and I find that it's okay. Most of this stuff I'm familiar with. Maybe the scale of that work that I've never seen before. Maybe also stuff like proper engineering practices are more established in companies abroad. Like we might sometimes look for stuff like that, they are luxurious. We might do it or not. But I think a lot of companies in the region are starting to realize how this is what do we call it? Indispensable part of the job that you need to do to make the work more organized, to make the people more interested in work, to retain these people, because you're applying the same practices that everyone is applying. And then you learn the hard way that all these kind of stuff are not optional. Actually, they are like crucial for your engineering organization to work in an efficient way that optimize the cost and provide rewarding career for everybody working.
Amazing. Let's dispel some of the myths. Me having worked in both regions, right?
Yeah, please.
So first of all, the better lifestyle, definitely. There's a lot more stability. The uncertainty of tomorrow doesn't exist. You know very well, unless there's like a World War III happening, which has just started in Europe, right? You know what's coming tomorrow. And I joke with some of my expat friends that we moved from our countries to here, and now we're gonna have gas crisis, electricity crisis, water crisis. So we brought the problems to Europe with us. Right? It's funny and sad at the same time, but I think because we're a little bit more accustomed to these things, were not very surprising when they started happening or when they became part of the public speech. But in general, overall, there's a lot more stability. The fundamentals and the infrastructure is there, so you stop worrying about survival and you start focusing on how you can prosper and flourish and build a better life. Now, the sad part about this is you never really belong. So even if you do your integration, even if you get your citizenship, even if whatever, like my girlfriend is Dutch, for example, like there's so many cultural clashes that we go through. It's fun to go through them sometimes, but also sometimes it's nice to be understood, right, in many ways. And I know for a fact that my children, for example, are always going to be torn, probably not as much as me, but always going to be torn between, Lebanon, what is Lebanon? How are they going to be raised? Whether are they gonna go? Is it just the summer vacation where we go there? Do we even want to go through the summer vacation every summer there? So all of these questions, they become very difficult to deal with when you move abroad. So now beyond this personal aspect, there's the aspect of tech. 100%, the scale is completely different. And learning how to build and design for scale is a completely different exercise than what we do. But all I can say is for the average engineer, it will probably take 1 year of being exposed to this type of work to acquire all the knowledge necessary to build for that scale. It will be a bit of a shocker at the beginning to understand how can we work with load balancers? What is caching? Do we need to implement it? How can we implement it in a good way? What are some of the good patterns? How do we do, rollovers? How do we do green-blue deployments? How do we even do canary deployments? How do we even do more complicated setups? And trust me, it doesn't take more than a year of being exposed to this environment to learn all of these skills. So just again, for the audience, you're not missing out on a lot. You're missing out a bit, but but all of these skills can be acquired and they can be simulated. So you can learn them through simulations. You can design these things yourself. It's definitely different to be on call for a platform that has thousands of people, worrying about what's going to happen in the next hour. But again, that is not to say that this is like an unacquirable skill. So yeah, 100%. You touched on all of the great points.
Thank you.
Technology stack wise, you would believe you would think that people would be using the latest, the greatest all the time. That's not necessarily the case at all. Specifically in Europe, a lot of the folks and the companies I see here, they still use Java. Some of them use Spring Boot. Some of them don't. A lot of them even use very old, archaic technology stacks that have not even migrated or moved on to newer, more modern stuff. So
Yeah.
you will pretty much see everything. And depending on the country, your treatment as a software engineer will completely vary. For example, in Germany, they are still very much a manufacturing country. They put a
Yep.
lot of emphasis on engineers who are mechanical engineers or even other types of engineering disciplines, and very little emphasis on software engineering. Like one of the biggest companies I know, I'm not going to say the name, they don't consider themselves a software engineering house, even though they employ more than 4,000, 5,000 software engineers, and probably less than that in terms of other engineering disciplines. They
Great.
still don't consider themselves, a software house,
Oh,
which is mind blowing. They consider engineering to be an IT department or a
yeah.
cost center.
Okay.
And this software engineering department or divisions, they build firmware for extremely complicated device that is used in the manufacturing of microchips and things like that. Without going too much into the detail, just giving you that perspective. A lot of the hype that we see online is probably generated from even a small specific spot in the US or a group of spots in the US. And they sort of control the narrative and the rhetoric that we have on our minds of how things are or how
Yeah.
software engineering is really
True
done.
that. Mm.
So I just wanted to clarify some of these things. If you join even big tech, you will notice that your experience will vary across teams. It will vary across regions. So if you work in big tech in the US, it will be completely different than how you will work in Europe. It will be completely different than what you will be doing, for example, in the Gulf or in our region, or
Definitely.
maybe even in APAC. And the regional cultural aspects will definitely seep in and creep into your day-to-day work and all of that stuff. So I'm just trying to not depress anyone. It's great to aspire for better, but let's just calibrate the expectations a little bit.
Yep.
It's definitely sometimes greener, but there will also be other hurdles and challenges coming with that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Ahmad, this has been amazing.
Thank
I
you.
would love to talk to you for hours. I think
Me too as well.
this definitely merits another episode, which we're gonna follow up on. Thank you very much for all of your time, your insights, your knowledge, your funny anecdotes, your stories. Is there anything else you would like to leave our audience with before we wrap up?
um, well, what like there's an interesting thing that I've always thought about it, about software engineering in particular, that I think we kind of picked this craft because not most of us, but a lot of people, a lot of us have picked that craft because I think we love being a creator. Like, so I think about software engineering as a sort of an art, but the thing that you're working with is different than somebody who we might call who use like stones to craft a good looking statue or a piece of wood, try to transfer it to a nice piece of art, or like a canvas where they draw. We craft interesting stuff using code. So and it's an ongoing journey that you're gonna be enjoying. I think this is why yeah, like a lot of people were asking me, why did you pick that? Because I think I like being a creator, like that. Um, Being able to craft something out of my tool is different in this case. It's not a piece of wood, or it's not a physical thing. It's code. That's it. Maybe it's an interesting thing I think about from time to time. Like I think we're kind of artists in a way, or maybe I like to think about it in that way. And there's also that in this particular career, I think it's the most interesting thing is it's always the sky is always the limit, because if you're good at what you're doing, you're gonna go big as much as you can. It's not like restricted to who you are or how were you raised or the kind of education that you had or what kind of help anybody can be providing you. I think if you're working at some place and you have people who are colleagues working with you, and in some way they're not good at what they're doing, the chances that they're going to be continue being in that team is very really low, because nobody, we kind of like complete each other when we're working, and nobody wants to work with a colleague that is like doing more harm than good. So for the young people over there who are looking for that career, I think it's a perfect career for you if you're looking to, if you're willing to work hard and you're gonna like give it all that you can. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Ahmad. You
Thank you
actually
so
made
much.
me think that we are indeed artists, but also we are unique because we are artists who create the canvas, we create the material we work with, and we create pretty much
Yeah,
everything
everything. Yeah,
to do our art,
yeah.
which is sort of fascinating. Thank you very much for this great episode, and I look forward for our next chat. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you so much, Basim. It's been a pleasure having being with you today, and looking forward, inshallah, for more if we gotta do that in the future. Thank you so much.